Hello everybody! Today we are going to learn the history of Chinese painting. And now I'm going to briefly introduce the concept of Chinese painting. So Chinese painting is one of the oldest continuous artist traditions in the world. Painting in the traditional style is known today in Chinese as Guohua, meaning national painting or native painting of China, as opposed to Western styles of art which became popular in China in the 20th century. It is also called danqing. So traditional painting involves essentially the same techniques as calligraphy and is done with a brush dipped in black ink or colored pigments. Oils are not used at all. As with calligraphy, the most popular materials on which paintings are made are paper and silk. The finished work can be mounted on scrolls such as hanging scrolls or hand scrolls. Traditional painting can also be done on album sheets, walls, lacquerware, folding screens, and other media. And now we are going to learn a very brief history of Chinese painting. The earliest paintings were not representational, but ornamental. They consisted of patterns or designs rather than pictures. Early pottery was painted with spirals, zigzags, dots, or animals. It was only during the Eastern Zhou that artists began to represent the world around them. In imperial times, which begins with the Eastern Jin dynasty, painting and calligraphy in China were among the most highly appreciated arts in the court, and they were often practiced by amateurs, aristocrats, and scholar officials who had the leisure time necessary to perfect the technique and sensibility necessary for great brushwork. Artists from the Han Dynasty to the Tang Dynasties mainly painted the human figure. Much of what we know of early Chinese figure painting comes from burial sites, where paintings were preserved on silk banners, lacquered objects, and tomb walls. Many early tomb paintings were meant to protect the dead or help their souls to get to paradise. Others illustrated the teachings of the Chinese philosopher Confucius or showed scenes of daily life of every day. During the Six Dynasties period, people began to appreciate painting for its own beauty and to write about art. From this time, we begin to learn about the individual artists such as Gu Kaizhi. Even when these artists illustrated Confucian moral themes, such as the proper behavior of a wife to her husband or of children to their parents, they tried to make the figures graceful. Now we are going to learn a very brief history of Chinese painting in Sui, Tang, and 5 dynasties. During the Tang dynasty, figure painting flourished at the royal court. Artists depicted the splendor of court life in paintings of the emperors, palace ladies, and imperial horses. Figure painting reached the height of elegant realism in the art of the court of southern Tang. Most of the Tang artists outlined figures with fine black lines and used brilliant color and elaborate detail. However, one Tang artist, the master Wu Daozi, used only black ink and freely painted brushstrokes to create ink paintings that were so exciting that crowds gathered to watch him work. From his time on, ink paintings were no longer thought to be preliminary sketches or outlines to be filled in with color. Instead, they were valued as finished works of art. Beginning in the Tang dynasty, many paintings were landscapes, often called shanshui painting. In these landscapes, which are often monochromatic and sparse, the purpose was not to reproduce the appearance of nature exactly, which is the spirit of realism, but rather to grasp an emotion or atmosphere, as if to catching the rhythm of nature. There was a significant difference in painting trends between the Northern Song period and the Southern Song period. The paintings of Northern Song officials were influenced by their political ideals of bringing order to the world and nature and tackling the largest issues affecting the whole of society and the universe. Their paintings often depicted huge, sweeping landscapes. On the other hand, Southern Song officials were more interested in reforming society from the bottom up and on a much smaller scale, a method they believed had a much better chance for eventual success. So, in this period, their paintings often focused on smaller, visually closer, and more intimate scenes, while the background was often depicted as bereft of detail as a realm without concern for the artist or viewer. It is much less personal. And now we are going to learn the techniques of Chinese painting. The two main techniques in Chinese painting are gongbi, meaning meticulous, uses a highly detailed brush strokes that delimit details very precisely. It is often highly colored and usually depicts figural or narrative subjects. It is often practiced by artists working for the royal court or in independent workshops. And then the other one is the ink and wash painting. In Chinese, 水墨, also loosely termed watercolor or brush painting, and it is also known as literary painting, as it was one of the four arts of the Chinese scholar official class. In theory, this was an art practiced by gentlemen of the gentry class, a distinction that begins to be made in writings on art from the Song dynasty, though in fact the careers of leading exponents could benefit considerably. This style is also referred to 写意 or freehand style. Landscape painting was regarded as the highest form of Chinese painting, and generally still is considered as the highest form of Chinese art. The time from the Five Dynasties period to the Northern Song period is known as the Great Age of Chinese landscape. In the north, artists such as Jing Hao, Li Cheng, Fan Kuan, and Guo Xi painted the pictures of towering mountains using strong black lines, ink wash, and sharp dotted brush strokes to suggest rough stone. In the south, Dong Yuan, Zhu Ran, and other artists painted the rolling hills and rivers of their native countryside in peaceful scenes done with the softer, rubbed brush work. These two kinds of scenes and techniques became the classical styles of Chinese landscape painting. And now we are going to learn something about the materials and aesthetics that Chinese painters employ in their art. So the Chinese painter uses essentially the same materials as a calligrapher: brush, ink, and silk or paper. And the Chinese judge his work by the same criteria they use for the calligrapher. Basically, vitality and expressiveness of the brushstroke itself, and the harmonious rhythm of the whole composition. Painting in China is, therefore, essentially a linear art. The painters of most periods were not concerned with the striving for originality or conveying a sense of reality and three-dimensional mass through aids such as the shading and the perspective. Rather, they focused on using silk or paper to transmit, through the rhythmic movement of the brushstroke, an awareness of the inner life of things. These aesthetics of line in calligraphy and painting have had a significant influence on other arts in China. In the motifs that adorn the ritual bronze, in the flow of the drapery over the surface of the Buddhist sculpture, and in the decoration of lacquerware, pottery, and enamel, wares which are decorated with the enamel of different colors separated by strips of metal. It is the rhythmic movement of the line, following the natural movement of the artist's of craftsman's hand, that to a large extent determines the form and gives to Chinese art as a whole its remarkable harmony and unity of style. Thank you very much. This is the end of our today's session. See you next time.